At the University of Arizona BIO5 Institute, we bring together hundreds of multifaceted experts that include world-class bioscientists, engineers, physicians, and computational researchers. This team science approach is designed to ignite creative solutions to the many complex biological challenges facing our families and communities, and has resulted in disease prevention strategies, promising new therapies, innovative diagnostics and devices, and improved food sustainability.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Science Talks, a conversation hosted by the BIO5 Institute at the University of Arizona. My name is Lisa Romero. With metabolic processes being a complicated aspect of biology, it takes specially trained scientists with a respect for the multidisciplinary approaches to tackle the science and the innovation related to this area. Today, we're excited to be joined by Dr. Ashley Snider, an associate professor of nutritional science and cancer biology at the U of A. Having received her Ph.D. in pharmacology and toxicology, Dr. Snider aims to understand more about fatty acids and their effect on inflammation and gastrointestinal diseases, including colorectal cancer. She is a member of the BIO5 Institute and most recently was selected a 2022 Women of Impact recipient from the University of Arizona's Research, Innovation, and Impact Enterprise. And that was based on her commitment to the university's mission and values, application of skills towards discovery and innovation, enrichment for our community, and the empowerment of others to ensure lasting change. And that falls right in line with our BIO5 mission. So Dr. Snider, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to start off with this. I saw that you got your bachelor's degree in marine biology. Is that correct?
That's right. I went to the
And you're doing a lot of that in Tucson, Arizona?
No, I did my undergrad in marine biology at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington and fully intended to go to grad school in marine biomedicine, and through a series of random events ended up here at the University of Arizona studying fatty acids and gastrointestinal diseases. So
I mean, do you want to riff on those sort of random things that led you here a little bit?
Sure,
and
sure.
Just talk about what, where that intersection ended up, occurring and took you on this new path?
Sure. So I took a couple of opportunities in undergrad to do some research. I was really interested in population genetics, echolocation in dolphins, broad interest, maybe some field research, maybe some basic research, and applied to the Medical University of South Carolina for their marine biomedicine program. And I got in, and the program was a little longer than I anticipated, and the mentor relationship that I thought was going to be there wasn't. So I rotated through a couple of other labs, and I did a gene therapy lab, a stem cell lab, and then a cell signaling lab, looking at specific lipids in ovarian cancer. And I was really struggling to choose a lab and to choose a path for the rest of my career. And I got maybe the best advice I've ever gotten in my career, and that was choose a mentor that you want to be like. And so I ended up in the laboratory of Kay Meyer, and we studied a lipid called lysophosphatidic acid and how it influenced growth in ovarian cancer. So, and then the lipid signaling carried on throughout my postdoc and junior faculty, and that was actually what led me to be recruited here to the University of Arizona.
That's a very cool story, first of all, and I love that. That learning moment of how incredibly important mentorship is. I know we'll get to that in a little bit, how you're you've been paying that forward ever since, because I know you do. I know it's very meaningful to you to share your experience and have somebody else be able to benefit from that as well. But that's a great story. I mean, and I think it's been really interesting as we've done these podcasts. And I probably wouldn't have guessed necessarily which was going to be which, but we've had some of our scientists that are like, I knew from the day I was born, I knew exactly, and I have done every step that, I've taken every logical step and done every, and there are a few of those. There's not very many. There's not very many. And I love this kind of a story because this is kind of real life, right? Most of us don't have that linear journey. We meet people along the way that impact us, or just random things pique our interest, and it ends up leading us in a whole new direction. So I love that story.
Exactly. Yeah. The more I talk and share that story with other people, it's nice to hear that there are a few who this was their direct track, but not many.
Not many, but that's a great one. Definitely marine. We have not had a marine biology origin story yet. So I love that. So, I mean, we're fast forwarding through a lot to today, but I'm really fascinated by the space you're working in today. As someone personally who struggles with, as many of us do, to some degree, but a lot of stomach issues, and in this interesting job that I have, where I probably know a little too much to just be dangerous because I'm not a scientist with information, but this whole area of inflammation and just everything, how this metabolic process just really impacts every function of our body and our life. And to talk a little bit about your work today, I mean, what you're working on, and sort of what that means to somebody, like me, or somebody else that, searching for answers.
Right. So I'm part of the Precision Nutrition and Wellness Initiative, and that's really what we're trying to get at is figuring out how to make foods work to make us work better. So my lab is really interested in the dietary fats that you eat and how they feed into our lipids of interest, which are sphingolipids. And most everyone, whether they realize it or not, knows about sphingolipids.
I was hoping you would pronounce that before I had to. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Ceramides are in a lot of skincare products. And so that is one of the hubs of sphingolipid metabolism. And so we're really interested in how your diet feeds into that pathway, and then what that does to gut health, whether if we can tweak the pathway by turning enzymes on or off, can we shuttle more towards an anti-inflammatory phenotype, or if we have an overexpression of some enzymes in that pathway and instances of inflammatory bowel disease or colorectal cancer, does that increase inflammation and increase disease? And so that's really what my career has been focused on as an independent scientist, is those enzymes and their roles in inflammatory bowel disease and colorectal cancer. And coming here to the University of Arizona, we've really jumped into the nutrition aspect of that, and how what we eat drives the generation of lipids in our bodies and what that does.
Yeah, that is it's really so important today, because I mean, but I think a lot of people just go about their life, and maybe like me, they think they're eating pretty healthy. I mean, I've always thought, I don't drink soda, and I don't go gorge myself on a bunch of cookies, so I'm eating healthy, and I've tried. But then, as I struggled again, sort of with some of the things in this area that have plagued me over the past 2 years, I realized it's so much more than that. And it's about the ingredients, and again, just how they interact with your body. And it makes a huge difference, but people don't understand or know that.
It really does. And that's actually kind of how we got into this field. So I started 15, 16 years ago looking at these enzymes and their role in inflammatory bowel disease. I have a family member with Crohn's, and so that's really what gave me the personal impetus to start studying this. And we really are not at a place yet where we're getting there. We're better than we have been, but we're not at a place yet where we can say, eat this, don't eat that. Some things we can, for sure, but what we're really hoping to do is be able to say to folks or to people who are suffering with these diseases that we know that these dietary fats do this, and maybe in conjunction with this and our medicine, we can prescribe foods as medicine and kind of as an adjunct or an additive to their current therapies to maybe increase their duration of remission, and improve their quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is a path in which we can make conversations like that about nutrition, about the things we eat, about the things that we put in our body, sort of gain momentum to be equally important in a conversation about solutions and treatments and things like that, as somebody says, oh, I just will go pop an acid or something, right? Like, I mean, again, people think that the Band-Aid stuff is going to help, and sometimes it does a little bit, but that's not the solution, right? So how do we start making, people that aren't necessarily around science and scientists that actually have the benefit of hearing this stuff and being like, oh my God, how do we start having that as part of the mainstream conversation along with medications?
Right, so that's a really good question. And I think we're starting to have that conversation, but like you said, in more of a medical or a science environment. But we are looking at, we as the field, not we in my lab, but we as the field are looking more at precision nutrition, really in diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, in specific cases of precision medicine for cancer patients. I think as a whole, we're getting there with nutrition. We just have to find a better way to disseminate information in a readily available package for the general population to understand, and make that more widespread and more available rather than in just those scientific or medical instances.
Right. And I'm sure it's, added complications with, segments of population that just don't have the same access to knowledge, much less, healthy foods and a way to understand how it impacts them individually. And I mean, I know that there's a lot of efforts at the U of A, and I'm sure, I know your initiative is focused on that piece, as well as how do we not just put it out there, but how do we make, this kind of information and these tools accessible to populations that, aren't as easy to reach or influence.
Exactly. And then you get into that, on top of that, you have gene diet interactions, and that's a whole big part of the precision nutrition and wellness aspect. We don't study that in my lab, but we study that in the collective space that we share here in BIO5. So that's another aspect where it's the precision point of this, and how can we make this individualized but accessible to all.
Yeah, that's really one of the things I love the most about BIO5 and the U of A really broadly, is they do, even broadly at the university, they really do, walk the walk in terms of actually creating unique philosophical and physical spaces that allow people to really come from these different places and put all those pieces together. But I think the precision, wellness nutrition initiative is so important because of that exact thing. I mean, you all are from, all different perspectives, and I know, several of you fairly well, and it's like, wow, like this is what we need. This is the kind of discussion and science that we need to be talking more about for prevention, not just treatment, right? But that's the goal of any medicine.
Yes, absolutely.
Prevention.
Yes, yeah. If we can keep it from happening to begin with, then that's an ounce of prevention.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's go back to, I think, this idea of mentorship that really changed your trajectory. I mean, completely, it sounds like, and led you to this other path that you've now become passionate and accomplished, and will, do really meaningful things for people. But I mean, talk about how that works in your lab and with you today, again, that concept of paying it forward, and the areas that really are most meaningful for you in doing that today.
Right. So I mentioned my PhD mentor, who kind of taught me how to be a strong, independent scientist, because that's who she was. And I started with her at the Medical University of South Carolina and moved with her to Washington State to finish my PhD. And when it came the opportunity for me to move places and do a postdoc. I ended up in the laboratory of Lena Obeid, a very influential woman physician scientist who taught me kind of how to be who I am today, how to ask the right questions and how to write grants and how to mentor students. And I really was part of a large collaborative group where we had the opportunity to mentor undergraduate and graduate students and each other, and realized that colleagues and friends and mentors and mentees can always kind of be the same people. And so I really try and use that mentorship that I received as a guidance for how I work with other people in my lab and within our unit and within our school and UA at large. I have several students in my lab. We meet at least once a week as a group, and then I meet individually with everyone, every other week. Usually we'll run around the lab around 4:30 or 5 o'clock and see what everyone did for the day, and do they have any questions, want to sit down and look at some data or answer questions and things like that. And that comes from the mentors that came around at 4:30 or 5 o'clock at the end of the day and, okay, what'd you guys do? And so I try and be present for my students. And I think that is a really important aspect. Sometimes I'm more present than they want. I'm in the lab teaching them how to do things, which actually I think they enjoy. I joke, but and then just provide them with the framework that they need, the knowledge that they need, the resources that they need to become successful. And I've had the opportunity to work with a couple of different programs here at the university. One of my favorites is the Women in STEM, Women in Science and Engineering. It's the WISE program. Yeah. And I really enjoy mentoring young women in science, and we're becoming more equal in the room instead of the minority. It's really kind of stark as a junior investigator when you're one of 3 women in the room. And I never felt different or less than, just it's nice to see representation and provide that sometimes for students and technicians and people in the lab. And so I really try to be present, answer what they need and provide what they need. And that's the way I was mentored, and I hope it works. So.
Well, I'd say they're pretty lucky in anybody that has that kind of dedication and just, again, willingness to share and be, side by side with these students. I mean, I didn't have that type of experience in college at all. And I mean, I think it would have made a whole world of difference again. And maybe it would have showed me what I didn't want to do, but it very well could have showed me something I didn't even know existed, which is, I guess sort of your origin story as well. But that is students that have that today, that have that from you, from somebody they admire and look up to and want to learn more from. It's just a really big gift, I think.
Yeah, and I try and encourage students to try it, whether it's research in my lab or an internship or something. Just try it. That's also how I figured out that field research probably wasn't going to be my favorite thing. And really led me more towards a molecular focus, doing population genetics in a lab. But yeah, just try it, see if you like it. If you like it, do it again. If you don't, no harm, no foul. So,
yeah, because if you don't try it, you really don't know what it is.
Exactly.
I mean, you can think you know what it is, but you don't. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
So, and I think you learn, again, I think as just in people, we learn our biggest biggest lessons from those types of situations too.
Absolutely.
Not just the ones that are obvious, but the ones that maybe don't work out or we don't like, and again, or we find out something new, and it's very cool. So thank you for that. I think, again, the University of Arizona, I am not a faculty member or a scientist, but I think just across the board, I notice this even in sort of areas I work in, is again, does a pretty good job of that type of access and the integration of Dr. Barton, who's the director of BIO5, the biggest things that we talk about as an institute, and that really is driven from her vision, is not talking about research and innovation, that mission of BIO5 separately from our training and education mission. It is intertwined. So we are training the next generation scientists because they're working on science today, and they are furthering the field, and keeping our senior people on their toes, and the two don't exist in academia without each other. And I think that's a newer way to approach it, but it's true.
I have that conversation with the students in my lab all the time, that this is a reciprocal arrangement, that you're in here doing the science and learning the new things, and then we get together and we think about different ways we can take it, and by the time you're done, you're actually going to be the one driving most of it. And so it's see one, do one, teach one, or the student becomes the master. It's kind of, that's the way I like to see things go, and so that's what we aim for.
Yeah, that's great. Do you actually teach too?
I do
outside of the lab. Yeah.
I guest lecture when asked, typically, just so I can get access to students, and I really enjoy face-to-face instruction. I hadn't had to teach very much before I came to the University of Arizona, and the first 2 years, first 18 months were COVID. So online teaching was not my strongest suit. I could probably have developed better skills since then, but really being in the classroom is a lot of fun. I teach a journal club course every spring. It's called Emerging Topics in Precision Nutrition and Wellness. And I poll the students the first week of class and kind of get a feel for what they want to learn about. We have some key things that we're going to learn, but then we also read papers and discuss and present in an open forum type format, and I really want them to be reading things that they're interested in and passionate about. And that goes back to the mentorship. That was one of the first things that I joined Lena's lab as a postdoc, and she said, okay, well, find things that you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about it, you're going to work harder and be more fulfilled in what you do. And so I also try and pass that along to my students in the classroom and in the lab.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Passion trumps most things on any given day. So that's a really great tip. So one thing we really like to ask about is, I would touch on it a little bit, about sort of roadblocks or failures, or I think the pace of science sometimes is not something people are expecting. So the slower pace of science is not what it's expected, to put it mildly, I'm sure. But how do you integrate that into not only how you're training and mentoring people, but in your own lab and your own work? I mean, what's your go-to process for sort of mitigating roadblocks and challenges that come up as you're going through and trying to achieve these research goals?
Right. So it's funny that you say failures, because academic science is full of those. But what I try to do is, in my own career trajectory, and then what I instill in my students, is just perseverance. Mm-hmm. I submitted many grants before I got my first independent investigator grant, and it really is just a process of perseverance and listening to what other people have to say and asking and seeking that advice. To not be afraid to ask for what you need and then expect to receive it in some form or fashion, at least within reason. And so really just to persevere, and then to also plan ahead. So, and this is, I think, important for me to sustain the growth of my lab and sustain the funding and sustain the students. But it's also really important for the students to plan ahead. Some of our experiments are 24 weeks long or 21 days long. And either way, that's a huge investment of time and energy into an experiment. And so plan ahead and know that you have the things that you need to make the end of that experiment successful. And I'd let them fail. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable for all of us, but they need to fail in order to know what that feels like. One, from a personal anxiety type place, because a lot of students who come into a PhD program or into an honors program or into higher education may not know what it really feels like to fail.
No.
And the first grant application you submit, you're probably going to find out.
Yeah.
So, but then, you know, okay, so how could we do this differently? So then we build back and okay, this didn't work. What could we do to make it better or different or improve our methodology or improve the way we think about it? Can we plan better? Did we just forget a step and need to make sure that that's written in our notes? Do you need some more training? You know,
Right.
I'll go in the lab and help you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really just persevere, plan ahead, and we're all going to fail at some point. So be not comfortable with that uncomfortableness, but learn from it and keep going, I guess. So
Yeah. I think the most important thing of everything you said is, you know, the lessons come from failing for all of us in life, but I think the ultimate lesson, as you're describing it, at least in the people that you know you're teaching and mentoring, is not just the lesson in failure, but the lesson that you have a net under you when you fail. So you're providing the net and the safety, safe space to fail. And I think so often we go, you got to fail to succeed, and we let people fail, but we don't provide the net. And I love that that's how you describe it, because you have to have that safe space to do that.
Yeah. And I really, it's tough for some students and other students, but then that's also like what I'm trying to build is this lab family where we fail and help each other and collaborate and work together and support each other. And so yeah,
and you're all human beings, and you know, you're balancing life and work and all those things we all have to try to figure out. And well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I also, one of the first things I tell students when they join my lab is you're gonna make mistakes. I just need you to be honest about them, because if we don't know where something went wrong, we can spin our wheels for quite some time trying to figure that out. And so typically my lab manager will come in and be like, oh, something this and this. And I'm like, that was me. Which is why they don't always love it when I'm in the lab. I sometimes make a mess. But you know, you have to be willing to say, oh, you know what, that was me. I'm really sorry. Or, oh, you know, I don't think I did that step, and maybe if I go back and try again and make sure that I wrote that down and do it again, that the next one will be successful. But you need to be willing to also accept and admit mistakes.
And again, that's a great gift for them, because you know, they just see that even at your level or at any level, we all do it, right?
Yes.
And it's always going to be okay.
Exactly.
So that's a big gift. Well, that's amazing. I love that approach. And again, it's something that's so meaningful for us here at BIO5 is integrating those two things, this excellent science that really makes a difference for people, but also, you know, this idea of bringing people alongside you to do that and preparing them for their future, you know, work. And I love the way that you've described that. It's really meaningful. So I guess we kind of like to end with, this is just a kind of interesting one to me. I always like to see what people say to this, but if I had to ask you in one word, what does science mean to you?
That's tough.
It is.
It is. Fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, it should be fun.
It should be.
Yeah, you should be surrounded, and that comes also into the choose a mentor that you want to be like. Be in a lab space where you're happy, and again, the passion will like that all kind of feeds into it being fun. And not every day is fun, but really it's fun for me when I see a student say, oh, I got it. And they got the one piece of data that's the last piece that goes into a manuscript, or something they've been really struggling, or something's just not working and we can't figure out why. And then there's just a light bulb or a click and everything. And that's fun. And it's fun for them too. And we are building a lab where it's a fun environment. And I think that makes students want to be here more. They want to learn more. They want to engage and interact. And so we try and keep it fun.
Yeah, I love that. So what's kind of next on the radar with your work? To give us sort of a, like, you know, what you're immediately working on towards something that's going to be kind of a really interesting development.
Right. So right now we're really interested in the fats that are in milk and how they play a part in your digestive health, for lack of a better term. We're looking at that in models of inflammation. We're looking at that in normal healthy controls. We're looking at how that feeds into our lipids of interest and what those do. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a solid feel on how those fatty acids that are in milk or olive oil or butter, which is also the same as milk, how that feeds into what we're interested in and what that does for gut health. And can we maybe start adding more milk into our diet, or maybe we don't need as much milk as we thought we did. Don't get me wrong, it's not that simple. But because milk provides other things besides fat.
Right.
But really, can we look, and then maybe can we look at ways in which we can use the things that are in milk, or the fats that are in milk, and what other food sources can we add to build into that puzzle, and how can we start to maybe protect from some of the inflammatory phenotypes that we look at. We also are looking in another related type model at potential biomarkers in colorectal cancer. And I think that work has the potential to be very powerful. And we have some great clinical data and some tools and models that others don't quite yet have access to, that we're going to use to start answering some of those questions.
That's really exciting. I look forward to seeing those steps as they unfold. And again, I think this work is so meaningful, and in a different way than I think, again, we're used to in the space of just therapies and treatments and medicines. And I think this is so important, and I'm really excited to follow along as these things come to be discovered and see what happens next. Yeah. Well, thank you again. I could talk to you forever, but thank you again for all you do for the U of A and BIO5 and our students. And I really enjoyed talking to you and appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us today for another episode of Science Talks. For more information on the BIO5 Institute, visit us at bio5.org.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Science Talks. Continue the conversation with us next time as we learn more about the amazing science happening at the University of Arizona's BIO5 Institute.